Welcome to our Mantis Guard maintenance and retention section. The Mantis Guard is kind of like the missing link in our Nogi De La Riva system, because without the Mantis, which is essentially, just so I can quickly show you guys, is a clamp. Right? So all of our other Nogi stuff is like hook and frame, or Nogi De La Riva stuff is hook and frame based. The Mantis is a clamp that allows me to attach to your leg, whereby if you try to flee, you're not going anywhere. If I use this correctly, you can't disengage from the guard. So no matter how good you get at your Nogi De La Riva controls, whether it's your DMX or your Nogi Deep De La Riva, all that stuff, you're still going to have somebody who's occasionally athletic enough, skilled enough, a combination thereof, where they can just run from you. This allows you to deal with that. So I have to take a moment here to verbally fillet Keenan Cornelius for sharing some of this information. I was lucky enough to train with him a couple of years ago, which very briefly, and this kind of started us on the path towards developing a Mantis Guard system.
As far as you know, he developed the Mantis Guard first.
As far as, well, he certainly coined the name and certainly coined some of the transitions that sort of set us on this path. I know there are some other people who use the De La Riva with a grip, but I certainly got it from Keenan, so I want to give him all kinds of credit. If you have an opportunity to go train with Keenan, buy any of his instructionals, his website, it's all great stuff. Check Keenan's material out. This was the launching point for our Mantis Guard system, and just run, and this kind of takes that away. We're going to start with a few videos on how to establish the Mantis Guard. Basically, we're either going to be getting there from the De La Riva guard or from a general recumbent open guard where somebody chooses to step in. But there are a couple of different ways that can happen, so we thought we'd give you specific tutorials on each one. Alright, so 90% of your opponents are going to be right leg dominant. They'll be passing right leg forward, so you're usually going to be playing your De La Riva off of their right leg, your left leg. To move into the Mantis Guard, we'll go through just the order of operations, and then I'm going to give you a little bit of context on when you might choose to do this as opposed to some of the other attacks that we included in the previous section. So if I want to transition, and I'm just keeping my foot here just for now, just to kind of relax it, so we can focus on this area. To transition to the Mantis Guard requires that I have a placeholder, because if I just drop my foot out, I'm no longer controlling Stefan's ability to flee. So I'm going to keep my De La Riva hook in while I take, in this case, my right hand, so cross hand, behind my partner's knee. Now I can release the De La Riva hook. When I say place my hand behind his knee, I'm not just touching his knee, I'm pulling in. I'm making sure that I'm using an isometric contraction or a roll. Exactly. My other leg is still curling, and I'm making sure that my hamstring is pressing to create a counterpoint, because I'm going to have to release the ankle. So if I'm just holding here tight but there's no counterpoint, there's still a potential that he could flee. So I'm pressing my left leg forward while simultaneously pulling back, and I'm going to adjust my hip out at a bit of an angle. If I stay here in the standard De La Riva configuration, I'm going to jam myself up. The space won't exist for me to smoothly move my arm in. So I'm pulling up to here and then going biceps deep with my left arm. I'm going to grab at my shin fairly high up, as far as is reasonable for me to go. Now we're going to start to worry about this foot. So if I had started with the De La Riva with my, let's get you based out a little bit. If I started in the De La Riva here, this foot being in place is actually kind of blocking me. So oftentimes when I start with the butterfly hook, I'll still take this foot out so that I can base while I'm adjusting my leg, and then I'm going to get to here. Now I'm going to reinsert that butterfly hook, and I'm going to bring myself back to center. When I'm doing this, there are going to be a bunch of kuzushi movements that we do in later videos, but I'm never just going to camp out here. I'm never just going to go here and stop. The entry is going to always involve, when I place the knee in, I'll be pulling and extending and trying to rock my partner into the Mantis with one leg off the mat. I basically want to play the Mantis Guard almost like I'm attacking a single leg. I want to get your leg off of the ground and affect your base immediately that way. If I can't do that, then I got to start transitioning to other things. Okay, I want to add a little bit of context on when you go to Mantis Guard as opposed to when you would just like continue to play the no-gi De La Riva guard. In particular, people who visit my academy and train with me have asked this question because I tend to either, like from the no-gi De La Riva, I tend to either go to the Kaioterra ankle lock or to the Mantis fairly quickly. And so a couple of the visitors have asked, like, when do you decide which one to do? And the heuristic is, if somebody's knee is a little bit more turned out, then I don't necessarily want to go to the Mantis as much. That's when I'm going to go to the Kaio ankle lock, because part of the sort of the requirements for success with that ankle lock is to have the hamstring pressing against the side of the shin to negate your ability to turn your knee in this way. Like keep going, there you go. Because I can't finish the Kaio ankle lock from here. So if your knee is kind of turned out, that's usually when I'll make this motion. When your knee is slightly turned in, that's when I'm already halfway to our major like back attacks that are going to come out of the Mantis guard. So that's kind of my decision process for which sort of series I attack, provided I'm not already rocking you all over the place with the no-gi De La Riva or DMX series. That's that's the decision point. And we're going to give you a little bit more, obviously, detail on the Mantis position itself, how we're going to do our Kazushi and sweep out of it in future videos. This is just how we're getting there from the no-gi De La Riva guard. Okay, our next entry is going to be from the seated guard. As we discussed in the no-gi section, or the no-gi De La Riva section, we want to win the hand fight, right? I'm not going to try to like go into Mantis guard like this when you've got all the potential weapons kind of pointed at me and you're in base, you're in posture, and you're in structure. So assuming that I get some kind of hand fight victory and I get a grip. We kind of went over this, but just quickly to review, I don't want to pass your palms. So if your palms were down and I went to do this, I'm giving you a free grip. All right, which again, if I'm interested in like counter hand fighting, I can do that. But if I'm not, then I definitely don't want to do that. So I always want to try to come over top of the back of your hand to get my grip. Now that I've got this grip, I need to create some tension, kind of hang off of you a little bit. And when you start to pull up, I'm going to move to the back of your knee. So one of my hands has to go to the back of your knee. As you start to pull up, one hand goes to the back of your knee. I shoot this leg around. I go underneath, and I'm immediately bringing this shin in contact so that I can start to extend you away. Right? I can pull here and then extend, which again, we'll go over more details on that in the Kazushi section, but I never just go here and I agree. Like, this is not a good position for me if I'm not affecting your alignment. And I mean, again, you can say that for any guard, just to like do a little bit of debunking. Like if you come into my closed guard, which is the the main self-defense guard, if I'm just sitting here and not doing anything, you're gonna punch me in the face, right? And there's nothing I can do to stop you. I've got no distance management. But if I'm actually like moving you around, doing all this stuff, then it becomes an effective guard. I think that kind of gets lost in the shuffle among the YouTube experts.
For sure. Like
in
if
the
you take a
comment section.
snapshot in time,
Yeah.
oh, groin's open. If I'm flailing, and that was a snapshot in time, but now I'm falling this way.
Then the exact, yeah. So it just goes back to the initial kind of conceptual understanding of what jiu-jitsu is and what the guard is. The guard is a range management tool that should be utilized to unbalance your opponent and force them to put their hands on the mat, force them to recover their base, break their posture so you can attack them. That's what negates the strikes. It's not the fact that you wrap your legs around someone.
That's a magic position.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, again, all you have to do is watch a little bit of MMA to see that the closed guard is no magic solution to people punching you, right? Like, there's still a lot of work to be done, and if you don't understand that, again, I can't help you, man. Like, yeah.
So just to go back to establishing Mantis from seated guard.
Yes.
I suppose if the guy does step into the middle.
Oh, absolutely. Then it's simply a matter of gripping the back of the knee to secure it.
Because some guys will step in the middle and they're trying to essentially put usually
Yeah.
put the knee on the chest. Then.
Totally, which is like, that's really what I want. That's super helpful. When we go over some like the past prevention stuff, we're actually going to discuss just how foolish it is to try to knee cut the Mantis guard. Which is, I would say that the knee cut is probably like the most common pass. Like and rightly so. Like it's an excellent guard pass, but not against this, right? You're giving me way too much control of basically this lever, right? So as you bring your knee over my hip, I'm able to still control this because of the strength of the clamp. And that's again just to give a little bit of background, which and we'll probably talk about this in some other sections, but the strength of the Mantis guard as opposed to any other no-gi De La Riva variant is the clamp. When I clamp onto you, you're not going anywhere, and there's no simple way to undo it. It's like there's no easy way, or sort of simple. There's no easy way to undo it. There's no easy way to open the closed guard. There are simple ways, but they still require
work.
A ton of work, right? Like you don't want to go into the closed guard. Mantis is kind of like that. There's no easy way for you to undo it, and so you're going to be doing a lot of work to try to get out of it while I'm constantly rocking your base and attempting to attack you. And again, not that I want to keep picking on these idiots, but unbalance you, take your back, etc., etc. Okay, our next entry is going to come. This is basically like a competition type of thing, right? Like I'm on my back, we're in a guard engagement phase sort of thing, and you decide to try to step into the middle against my open guard. I'll use a cross butterfly hook to hook your knee. And there's kind of two ways this can go. If I time this, like if you're already sort of like into the procedure, then I can move into the entry by timing you before your foot hits the ground. So I'm kind of pulling you forward.
Yeah, it's not so much a side round kick as it is.
It's a butterfly hook. It's a reverse butterfly hook with a pull this way. However, if you manage to step in, and maybe I just didn't time it correctly, yeah, and you're kind of here, I can still do the same thing, except instead of pulling you forward, I'm pulling myself in. Right? So both are fine. Obviously, it's a little bit better to time somebody when they've got one foot off the mat because they've got less, like, just poor balance. But either way, I'm getting to where I need to get to. As soon as I get here, though, I do want to immediately take that other leg and get to the other side. This hand is a floater, so sometimes it'll be doing this. Again, in the event that you were in a fight, an MMA fight, you'd be using this. If I can get grips on you, that's going to be one of our kazushis. These grips are highly temporary in nature, right? I don't have the luxury of a cuff sleeve grip, so I will be doing this. But even though the grip is temporary, the response is still going to have to be for you to pull back. And as you do, I can start to tilt your rock.
And then foot's elevated. You got the single leg takedown from your back.
From my back, exactly. And like I said before, this is where we want to live in the Mantis guard. I don't want to be here spending any amount of time with you in alignment because you could attempt to, again, pass, smash, all that kind of stuff. I highly doubt that somebody's going to be using Mantis guard for self-defense, but I really just want to make the point of how dumb these commenters are, so I'll bring it up every so often. I'd like to alienate some more people. Every video, yeah. If you wanted to use it in self-defense, I could stomp your groin. All right, now that we've gone over a couple of entries to get you into the Mantis guard, we're going to go over some kazushi. As we've talked about earlier, kazushi is an amazing Japanese term that just explains imbalancing or unbalancing, off-balancing, getting somebody from a position where they are not vulnerable to a sweep or a takedown into a position where they are vulnerable to a sweep or a takedown, which, we're talking about base, posture, structure, all that kind of stuff, center of gravity, that's all encompassed within kazushi. And so we're going to give you a couple of methods for imbalancing, off-balancing, unbalancing your opponent, and then a couple of basic sweeps, and then we'll get into more like retention, prevention of passes, and our main attacks, sweeps, back takes, submissions later on.
The first form of kazushi is yarn pull, which would never ever work in self-defense.
Okay, so assuming that I had gotten my grip on you and I managed to pull to the Mantis and I still had a wrist grip, or if we find ourselves in the Mantis and I managed to win the wrist grip, either way.
It'll probably happen if I'm on pushing the knees.
If you're thinking trying to pull, and again, this is not a good solution. This only works against the no-gi. Yeah, perfect. There you go. Yeah, you can do that, and I'd be able to grip fight. Once I gain this grip, all I need to do is, and again, it's important to note that when we're talking about pulling the arm, I'm not just pulling the arm. I'm pulling with my legs as well, right? And that's going to go for all of our kazushi movements, right? There's a simultaneous pulling with this butterfly hook, combined with a contraction here, combined with sometimes I'll be using this hand here to shift your weight. And frankly, there are people who are going to get it in their head that it's a good idea to try to drive this knee forward, which is super helpful to me, right? Like all of the movements to go into my sweeps are going to be aided by you bringing your center of gravity over me, and particularly tilting this knee forward, which again, we'll go over in another video.
So I'm pushing here, I'm pushing here, I'm pushing here, or you still have it from before.
Or I got the grip, exactly. So if you're like back a little bit farther, there you go, I'm pulling you forward and then I'm kicking you to this side. I want to tilt onto my right hip. So I move you, let's just turn this way. I'm moving you with this butterfly hook forward and then extending you to making you take a step. I'm not just moving you forward because that doesn't allow me to elevate this leg.
It's a banana peel effect. I feel like I'm being lifted, and then before I land, woo!
You're sliding out to the side, exactly. So if I can't create that, then I'm going to have to go into a different set of attacks, which we're going to go over later on. But basically, I pull you forward, I kick you, and I roll onto my side. From here, I'll be trying to grab this ankle. If I can't grab this ankle because your foot is farther away, then that's usually going to be because this knee is bent and we're going to have some attacks going this way, taking the back.
Perfect.
But if we end up here and I get both legs, I'm set up to do any kind of like double ankle, double lever to the hip type sweep. So that's our arm pull, again, from either the like guard pull directly from the seated to the mantis or from some form of hand fighting, particularly if you start to lean over me in any capacity. You don't want your weight coming forward here because it's going to make the levers to your hips pretty accessible.
Lead hand, rear hand, does it matter? If I was pushing your knee down?
It's much easier this one.
Right.
Right? It's harder for me to pull you from here.
Right.
Yeah, like this. It's just way more unlikely. And you're going to have that leg back slightly
Right.
usually.
That's a further distance as
Yeah,
well.
so it's just much less likely to work. I'm much more likely to have this one to begin with, and I'm much more likely to win the grip for this one. There's also just the fact that my row isn't particularly strong in this fashion.
Right.
My row here, it's like a high pull, it's much stronger.
Okay.
Alright, so preferable. I mean, if you get the grip, yeah, if I get this to happen, then absolutely, I can do the arm pull on that side.
Sure.
However,
But now you're like pulling out to this side
yeah,
in a weird
it's,
kind of way.
it's not the best. And this arm pull one is a target of opportunity. The main kuzushis that we're going to be using are going to just employ the legs because we're kind of counting on our opponent to not to make it available. There's no reason in a no-gi context that I should count on maintaining wrist grips because they're relatively easy to break, at least at a distance, right? Like if we're here like this, yeah, I can maintain a wrist grip. That's a completely different scenario if we're playing butterfly guard. But yeah, when it's this far away,
If only there was a counter.
yeah, there's no reason I should be able to hold on to it. So like I said, this is an opportunistic one. And all of our kuzushis, and we'll make this point going forward continuously, all of the kuzushi movements are designed to work together. Your resistance to one will feed you back into another one, and so on and so on. So again, without that knowledge that we're trying to like intersperse these, interact with them, one kuzushi like this, it's bound to fail. We have to make sure that we're like chaining them together to expect any success. We found ourselves in the Mantis guard, and we want to perform a kuzushi, but we don't have access to the wrist control. Our partner's keeping their hands back, or they're just doing a good job of hand fighting, and I'm never quite able to make this grip happen. The elevation, there's two ways this can go. If Stefan's knees, which like Stefan's in a pretty good like kind of closed stance, I would have a hard time pulling him forward very much. So I'm going to try to elevate him by sliding my shin up towards his crotch. I'm not kicking him in the balls, right? This is not a striking technique. I'm not able to extend your knee outwards, and we'll go over the knee outwards variation in a second, but if I'm not able to extend the knee outwards, I can be posting on the knee with this hand while I slide forward, and then I'm tilting and moving this leg.
It's amazing. Like, I don't think you're exerting that much force, but you're just lifting me for a second and that's enough.
I just have to lift you for a second, exactly. Your ability to sink your hips here is what's good. Like, see, now I can't move you. I'm stuck. And not only that, like, we'll talk a little bit about range. I'm too close to you right now. One of the factors that's going to help me out is if I'm about here, now I can start to move you. And it's a subtle difference. But now if I'm here, I'm going to have a hard time moving you. So if we find that that's happening, we're either going to use this elevation here and then go behind the knee and lift, or we'll use the next movement in the series, which obviously is going to be the next video. But anytime we get a little bit too close or a little bit too jammed up, this shin slides, and then that allows me to move you. So again, I'm either posting on your knee and then extending my right shin into the pit of your knee while I rock onto my side and lift. I'm also bringing my forearm, can you just lift your leg for me? I'm bringing my forearm against your ankle as I turn my knee to create that kind of like partial lockout. Right? So if I don't do this part, if I just do this, your leg might come off the ground, but you might be able to stay. As I bring my forearm up, so I'm basically performing this kind of motion with my leg to try to angle your heel away from the ground. So the combination of those two things. If you're in more of an open stance, so like squatted down but knee open, yeah, exactly. That's when I'm gonna get the most mileage out of pulling on the knee this way. So you can see how that kind of cantilevers you, it turns you that way. This allows me to start to kick this leg over. Again, I'm not just kicking, I'm not just pulling. I'm pulling the knee towards me, and as soon as I can get you to step a little bit, I'm kicking you. All right, so let's just do that part by itself, because this bears repeating. I'll just do this part here. If I'm blocking your shin with like the Mantis entanglement, right? You can have that leg back a little bit, in a bit of a stance. So if I'm blocking this leg from coming forward and I start to pull you, you have to take a step. Right? If you don't take a step, you're going to start to lose your balance. So that's how I'm trying to do this. I'm trying to time it so that as you take the step, that's when I kick you across. Right? It's I'm sure quite akin to like the judo like foot sweep kind of movements, which I'm terrible at. So, but you're trying to time your partner while they're taking the step, and that's when you can extend their leg out, forcing them to shift their weight onto this leg, making this leg light, and then that rotation with the forearm, that rotation with my hip is what takes that leg off the ground and puts us into that single leg alignment. Kazushi. When you can't move somebody, when you can't catch the timing on shifting that back leg. This is a problem we had early on in the development of the system. Let's rotate around this way. Which is all of the movements as we went over are kind of contingent on getting someone to do this so we can get this leg up in the air.
So moving this leg.
Moving this leg, exactly. However, under certain circumstances, either the size of your opponent, their balance, it could be any number of factors, or frankly, I could be screwing it up. I could have got myself too close, and when I get too close, I no longer have the ability to pull forward, right? Like once my knees are as close to my chest as I can get them, I can't overcome the inertia of your body positioning. So if I'm too close, or if you're just like low and it's just like there's no way I can move you with this leg, I tried to do this, none of it's working. I'm going to take my high shin grip, I'm going to drop my foot to the mat, and my hand is going to slide down to my ankle. You can already see what's happening with this knee lever. Right? So I'm going from the bottom here to the side of my knee coming up towards your knee. So I'm using my knee to activate this lever. And if I were to keep this grip, I wouldn't be able to tilt my forearm down low enough to block your ankle near the Achilles tendon. So I wouldn't create this like counterpoint force here where I'm basically tripping you over my forearm. So I'm low, I'm trying to pull you forward, it's not happening. I immediately do that. Right? So if I ever find myself in this kind of trouble, I'm sliding, I'm going to here. We're going to go over the sweeps, like the basic sweeps from any kind of tilted back hip position in a minute. But the idea from here is if you don't choose to push forward, if you stay there, my foot goes into your hip and I tripod sweep you from there. But usually when you do this, people will start to drive, and then that just returns you to our initial Kazushi, and we can get to work from here.
It's essentially the Mantis guard form of the essential leg press Kazushi that you're using.
Well, exactly, yeah. It's the exact same thing. I'd like to think that I'm so damn clever for trying to figure out this solution to this problem, but it's pretty damn obvious. It's just the same thing we do in every other circumstance, which is block the bottom of the ankle, push on the knee to create a threat of a lockout or a partial lockout of the knee, which shifts our partner's hip back, and that draws a response, which allows us to...
Rob Biernacki, ladies and gentlemen, the man who invented the lever.
Okay, the tripod sweep is basically I guess we call it the jab of jiu-jitsu, or at least the jab of sweeps at our academy. And we use this with the Nogi De La Hiva guard. We're going to use it here in the Mantis guard, and use it with the reverse De La Hiva guard. Basically, anytime you can block your partner's knee pit and push on their hip while you're controlling their ankle, you're performing a tripod sweep. And it's an essential part of our Kazushi just because, frankly, it's one of those things that goes in cycles. At the beginning, when you're learning stuff, you're going to tripod sweep people a lot, especially if you're dealing with beginners, and then they're going to get really wary of it and really savvy to it, and they'll develop really good methods of defending the tripod sweep, which is why we include it in our kazushi, because you will sweep people sometimes with it, but generally speaking, once your training partners catch on a little bit, they're going to give you a specific response to that tripod, or to the threat, of the tripod sweep, and then you're going to use that to implement your kazushi to move to the other things.
Because you've imbalanced them.
Because you've imbalanced them, exactly. So, let's not assume that everyone just knows what a tripod sweep is. Tripod sweep out of the open guard would just involve putting my foot on your hip, taking my other foot behind your knee, grabbing your ankle, I'll pull you forward to load your weight up, take your leg off the ground, dump you down. Sure, that's a tripod sweep. So as that's going to apply out of the Mantis guard, we just went over our knee lever kazushi. So I'm here, I'm having a hard time moving you, so I tilt you backwards. That's what I'm looking for. Because if we were just here and I tried to tripod sweep you, that would be silly. Not only would you be able to deflect it really easily, but I'm taking my leg into a position where, I'm giving you a free leg drag. So I don't want to just stick my leg up right now. But as I apply the knee lever, now I can hit that tripod sweep.
To me, it feels like a continuous motion. What the energy you generated with the knee lever feeds smoothly into the
That's
tripod.
exactly it. So this is a sweep. I'm absolutely going to hit this on people. Once we land in this position, I'm just taking this foot inside and just getting ready. Please do not come up like this. Again, there's all kinds of stuff that I think is obvious, but bears mentioning occasionally. So I'm here. When I bring my leg in, we can pretty much move into a double under style pass. All right, we can simply technical stand up and retreat into like a normal, whatever open guard passing you might want to employ. But the idea is that we include this because oftentimes, as I perform this knee lever, and you know that the tripod sweep is coming, you force your way forward, and that gives us this elevation, which in the next video we'll be going over how to taint sweep somebody using that elevation. But I'm always trying to figure out a way to get you to give me your momentum, give me your center of gravity. That's what our kazushi movements are for. And I believe you said this, any kazushi movement that's done powerfully enough can just become a sweep in and of itself. There's certainly times where when I go to, if you step back in a little bit of a stance, when I pull someone forward and do this kick, they just fall down.
Yeah.
Right? I wouldn't normally consider that movement a sweep.
Sure.
But especially, I'm fairly tall, I'm about 6'2". When I roll with people, and they're not unskilled practitioners, they just happen to be 5'6". When I start stretching them, I can kazushi them a lot further, and they'll just fall down. Doesn't mean they suck. It just means the movement happened to be powerful enough to take their balance so far away from them that they weren't able to recover their base in time, and they fell down. And there's the reason we've separated our basic kazushis, which actually do include a couple of sweeps, from our more advanced attacks and sweeps, is because those sweeps are contingent on several things kind of occurring, and then we finish a sweep on a pretty skilled opponent who's frankly familiar with the material that we're utilizing. Whereas the basic kazushis and sweeps are just things that you can just kind of hit people with right off the bat, and they'll probably go down, and then they have to develop better responses, which is where we'll lead into more of our attacks. So hopefully that makes sense from a categorization perspective. Okay, so we're going to go over one of our basic kazushis into a common sweep, the taint sweep, as it were. There we go. So again, I've managed to pull my partner forward, elevate him. My left foot is going to start to move in towards, I'm trying to hook it underneath. If I can't, my right foot will replace it. So there's kind of two ways this can go. If I manage to tilt you far enough and my leg is long enough, then my left foot will go underneath. If I can't, then I replace it with my right foot. Your legs are a little bit quite beefy, quite thick.
Well, thank you very much.
With the two C's, I believe, is the correct. So I can't get my foot all the way around, so my right foot is going to replace. I'll be controlling the ankle as we talked about in the earlier video, and I'll just be pushing you towards the ground. I retain the Mantis grip. This is one of the great things about the Mantis is when we come out of any other type of, like De La Riva based sweep, I've got an ankle grip of sorts, but there's always a possibility that you can yank that leg out. Whereas when we come down out of the Mantis grip, you're just not getting that back. I can come up and maintain this while I move into, again, over-under style, knee cut style, whatever I want to do. I'm keeping one of your legs effectively out of the guard. There's no hooking, there's no framing, there's no clamping you can do with that leg. So you're left with one leg to defend yourself. It's not a guarantee of a pass, but it certainly ups my odds if I can just take one, if I could make you a single amputee, that would really help me in most of the fights I'd have. So from this angle, again, I've managed to elevate my partner. If I have the option of bringing my left foot underneath, I do. Otherwise, I bring my right foot underneath. A note about the hand positioning here, when we get the elevation to happen, I'm trying to time it as I do it. So if I were to like pull you forward, kick you, let's say I managed to, let's back up a little bit. Yeah, there we go. If I managed to pull you forward and kick you, and then you were to step like far away, and I'd have maybe a little bit of a hard time getting this, that's not ideal. So what I want to do is be ready to go, whereas I pull you and kick you, I'm kicking you directly to my grip. My right foot comes in, or my left foot again, depending on the scenario. Push, control, base leg. There we go. Base leg stays put. I control this ankle. Now my right foot tucks in. I can base, and I can let go now because you can't do anything with this leg. I'm in a base. I can start attacking my passing. Or if you manage to free the leg, I'll have to pass a little bit more, through danger. But like I said, it's really unlikely that you're ever going to get that ankle out. You're going to have to shield with that knee, which is a predictable response. If you're trying to set people up for leg locks, different passing series, you've really got a leg up in that department. Okay, now that we've covered our basic kuzushi and kind of maintenance, a couple basic sweeps, we want to cover defending passes. When we're talking about the Mantis guards, standing here, recognize that this is actually a very robust guard as far as not giving up passes, as long as I don't leave this leg dangling. If I do leave this leg dangling, I can be leg dragged, but even if I do get leg drag, I'm still in the Mantis guard, and somebody's still got to beat that. So this offers kind of an extra layer of security, but there are some other passes that you do need to worry about, as long as you're proactive. As we talked about in the previous section on defending passes with the Nogi de la Hiva guard, if you're proactive and you address the situation early on, the answers are pretty simple. You should be able to stay out of trouble. We will give you later stage responses as is necessary, but hopefully if you take our advice to heart, don't let a situation develop too far down that retention phase, super late stage broken alignment, because once that happens, there is no magic technique. There's no answer that you have for allowing yourself to get put so far behind the 8 ball. So respond early, keep your alignment. And then, like I said, we'll go through all the steps in the subsequent videos, and hopefully you'll never get your Mantis guard passed. All right, our first retention pass kind of addressing movement is going to be the leg drag. So I got myself in the Mantis. Again, if I'm doing a good job of keeping this foot behind the knee, and I'm doing a good job of managing with my hands and using our kuzushi, I don't have to worry about this. So I have screwed up. Or I got myself into the Mantis without being able to place this, and I put my leg up here. Again, I have screwed up, right? Without me kind of being asleep at the switch, this shouldn't happen. But if it does, the leg drag starts to come, I'm going to make that chopping motion that we've talked about earlier in our pass prevention, related to the Nogi de la Hiva guard. This is going to allow me to frame and start to invert. Because I've still got the lever to his hip here, I should be able to now swing my leg open and just reset. Right? If I didn't have the Mantis guard, this would look very different. Right? Like if we're in a deep leg drag here, I'm framing, I'd have to pummel my leg in. There's a different motion because I can't stop him from advancing into the pass. And because I've got the Mantis guard, if he puts me into the leg drag, even if he advances a fair bit forward, he still can't turn the corner on me. As long as I get some kind of framing here, we can move around a fair bit, but until this grip breaks, he's not going to be able to finish the pass because he needs to get that leg in here and then come around to side control. So as long as that leg can't go in that direction, I'm relatively safe from the pass being completed. However, I can't be lazy because once we get here, my hips are pointed in the wrong direction. So again, I'm framing here or framing here, right? Like inverted Cosby frame. If he's trying to keep this elbow pinned in tight, I'm really gonna have to work to extend my hip and then swing it around. As I swing it around, he notices that lever activation, right? Nobody kind of worth their salt is gonna allow me to keep this open because that's going to lead to like bad things happening. He's going to bring that back in. I'll pummel my leg back in, reset that butterfly hook. Because of the nature of the movement, because of me pushing him this way, he's going to be a little bit extended already, and I'll be able to move into all of my typical like double lever style attacks, taint sweep attacks, all the different stuff that we have covered before and have yet to cover in the coming attack and sweep volume. So that's the kind of early stage. The later stage is going to involve my Mantis grip being broken. So let's turn to this side here. If I get leg drag, and as Matt drives this knee in, this starts to break. If this breaks, I can't try to stay here. Any amount of time I spend here is just going to lead to me either getting my back taken or side control. So I've already got this frame in. As this grip starts to break, as soon as it starts to break, I'm extending my legs, getting to my elbow. This is basically like a sit-up / collar tie type escape. The problem is, Matt's on his feet, so he's got a ton of mobility. If I stay here, he's just going to go to my back. He's just going to circle around, go to my back. So I have to recognize that when I'm here, I have to really monitor the regulated tension. Like if I don't control the tension between us, he's going to take my back. I'm hooking onto the back of his lat, so as he comes up tall, I never allow him to change the angle around my elbow. I'm hooking onto the back of his lat, and I'm sinking my arm as I back away and pummel this leg in. Once I've pummeled this leg in, even if this arm goes away, if he starts trying to move to my back, I'll elevate him, I'll be okay as long as he doesn't connect his hands in the arm triangle position. So as long as I've got some kind of frame, some kind of hook, I'll be okay. So once again, and again, earlier is better. So we end up in the drag, and I feel I'm letting, oh crap. That's the motion. I know that I'm not going to be able to stay on my elbow for long because, again, just like the force vector that's coming in, I can't stay at 45 degrees. He's coming in at a 45-degree angle. I'm matching him at a 45-degree angle, but let me take this foot out. As he starts to rotate around me, I'm nowhere near as mobile, and now he drives in, and now the angle changes. So I can't outmaneuver him. He's on his feet, I'm on my butt and on my hand. So I have to make sure that we're here, he's driving in, I'm retreating, using this pummeling motion, and I'm basically in a butterfly guard. If he were to try to pursue now, it'd be suicide. I would wrap up a guillotine, flip him over with it, and I'd be into my offense. So he's liable to know that if he's fairly good. So he's not going to pursue. We're going to end up resetting. You'll probably be in some variant of a butterfly or a single leg X. You'll either have to find your way back into the Mantis guard, to the De La Riva, or just continue to play from there if you've cultivated that style of guard. So it's kind of your early stage, kind of your late stage. If you let it go beyond that, there's no like, once we get here, if I lose this grip and he gets all the way into here and he beats my frames, there's no answer at this point. At this point, my guard is passed. So he's gonna pass, I'm gonna make sure that I'm blocking the crossface and just start to set up some kind of solid defense. I'm not going to try to like turn super hard, try to get out of this stage. I've lost the range battle. I need to concede a little bit and just accept a pass, but without a broken alignment. If I allow my posture to be broken in addition to the pass because I'm still trying to do something, now I'm liable to get submitted or get my back taken. So cut your losses at that point, reset with a good crossface block. Otherwise, if you manage to use your frames properly, if you manage to pummel your leg properly, you should be okay. Okay, our next movement is have defend against the knee cut, which really isn't the thing. So, like if I get you in the Mantis guard, the odds of you being able to successfully knee cut to this side are like Jack and shit and Jack left town. So you shouldn't really be playing this. But some people are, ornery and will insist on trying to do it, in which case oblige them and take their back. All right, we've gone through this motion in a couple other videos, so I'm not going to go through all the details. But anytime somebody chooses to bring their knee across this line in the Mantis guard, they're giving me the opportunity to pinch my shins together, controlling the direct lever to the hip. I'm now going to switch my grip from the Mantis guard hook, like the deep bicep hook, to the bunion, and I'm going to rotate my partner as I kick him over, grab the hip. All right, I'm still controlling this. If Matt tries to drop his hip to the mat, go ahead. not really going to work as long as I control this lever. If I were to release this early, he could hide his back, he could hide his hip to the mat. So I just want to make sure that as I'm doing this, I'm keeping this ratchet effect where he can't drop his hip to the mat. Now I grab his hip, I keep my shin behind his knee pit, and now I can start to slide out, set my seatbelt, set my hook, attack the choke. Like I said, this isn't really a thing. Nobody should be trying to knee cut your Mantis guard, at least not in this way, not without breaking it and removing the control. So if somebody just tries to jam across into a knee cut, oblige them, let them do it, take their back, strangle them, and probably call them an idiot while you're choking them out. Okay, our next pass is the double unders pass, and this actually is not such a bad idea, unlike the previous knee cut, which we really have included for comedy value, and because I like calling people idiots once in a while. This is double unders, so if Matt manages to disengage my butterfly hook, again, anything that comes from me in the actual Mantis guard shouldn't really be a threat for passing. This configuration is pretty stable. It's kind of like the closed guard in the sense that you can't just pass, you have to break the position. Right? Any good guard should have that kind of if you can just pass a guard, it's not a good guard. Somebody should have to break the position. And the more of a clamp you use, the more stable the position is, right? The De La Riva guard is not stable in that sense because there's no clamp. Any movement that's not met with a response on my part is going to result in the guard being broken. Whereas with the Mantis, because of the strength of the clamp, he can move around. I don't really have to do a whole lot. As long as I keep this foot here, I don't have to respond nearly as much as I would in a less stable guard, right? So because of that clamp, we're afforded the luxury of moving less. It's just, frankly, what makes this such a good guard, especially if you're a little bit old and out of shape like me. So what my partner has to do is get there. Now we've got some issues because now he can go under this leg, and start to move me into the double unders position. And as long as my arm stays trapped under his leg, if I don't address it, now I'm really caught. He passes, my arm is caught, I'm immediately twisted up. Deep, deep shit if I let it happen. So, again, assuming either I made the error, left the leg dangling, or he stripped it and he moves into his double unders. As soon as he does, I'm intercepting. Let's rotate slightly. As soon as he does, I'm intercepting this hand. I don't want Matt to be able to connect to my hip. So I intercept this hand. I can go double up on it if I need to, and I just bring my shin in front. This is a really strong position. He can't really prevent me from tilting him that way, because if he were to hold on to my leg here, I would basically, you notice how Matt instinctively puts his hand on the mat. He would sweep himself if he tried to hold on. So as I go like this, I don't have to really worry about what he's doing. If you're a leg entanglement guy, you've got outside ashi, you've got some options. If you're a X guy or a gal, you've got these options. You want to just make sure that you know that as long as we're holding this, my leg can kind of migrate into any number of configurations. And if my partner is still posting that hand, I can shoot the triangle at this point. We're going to go over some stuff like that in a troubleshooting section later, so we won't address it right now. But anything that I want from here, even returning back to the Mantis, is totally viable. So just recognize the threat, which is really this arm. Right? This arm can go underneath and not cause me a ton of problems. This arm, once it goes through, is going to cause me a ton of problems. So I just Y block, intercept, double up on it, scoop my hip back, set my shin in the way. I can just push him away, step on his chest, move myself underneath, or bring the leg back into the Mantis. He's got to fix his alignment. He has to bring his elbow in, and now we're right back to where we started. If his knee is down, we're going to have some answers for that a little bit later, but I can still always just take that leg off the ground. That's the power of that Mantis clamp, and now I'm back. But as long as you intercept that hand, you should be able to shut down the pass pretty easily. Okay, we need to go over rolling pass negation. So there are a couple of rolls that you can attempt against the Mantis guard that end up with berimbolo or crab ride type variations. There's two of them, so we'll just quickly show what they look like. So from the Mantis, if this leg ends up out and a little bit low, Matt back steps, hooks my shin, and he rolls over, and as he rolls through, he takes the bolo, and he takes my back. The other variation is if I'm keeping my leg fairly high so he can't roll through this space, so when he backsteps, he goes under, rolls through, extends the leg, and comes up into a pass. There are some potential crab ride variations there, but I need to get into that just right now. What I'm going to look to do, anytime somebody rolls over this space, so he backsteps, as he starts to roll, I want to slow his hip down and I want to stomp my leg to the mat. We kind of talked about this when we went over like the berimbolo, is if this leg ends up over here, then he's got some pretty strong control. If this leg ends up over here, I'm in that sort of wedge hook where as long as I'm controlling his hip, I can now push, set my twister hook, truck, control the leg, pull to the back. I'm basically re-trucking or like countering the rolling back take. So once again, he steps, he goes over this space. I catch his hip and I try to stomp my legs to the mat. If he starts to try to push to launch me over, he can do the same motion to me. So I just need to be really wary here that I'm catching this leg or controlling it in some way, because if I keep this free, his hamstring curl could potentially affect me. Right? Exactly. As soon as that knee comes in, it's a problem. So I'm hiding this leg from his lever control, and I'm controlling here. So now his hamstring curl is severely limited just by my frame. I'm still gripping the hip here. He's usually going to be hiding his arm. It's pretty typical for someone to do this kind of thing. So now I'm going to use that left leg. My right knee is coming in, and I'm wedging him over, and that's why I need to control his hip. If I've got the leg dexterity to do this, I do it. If I don't, I scoot my hip back, and then I adjust it. I can use this leg as a placeholder system. I can step on the calf or in the knee pit, and then transfer my hook, grip over top of the forearm or the bicep. If the gap exists, I can hook in with either arm, pull my partner to me, reach underneath, go for the rear naked choke, or secure the back control. So that's the first version, where somebody is going over the gap or through the gap between your thigh and your armpit. The second version, where somebody goes underneath this space. As they roll, I need to pummel this leg in. If this leg gets trapped, now he's got both levers to my hip, he finishes the pass. So when he goes underneath of this space, I extend and I pummel this leg in. So now as he's trying to extend me, I'm basically using like a dick frame. I'm putting my heel against his crotch. So as he goes to extend me away, nothing really happens. I block, pummel, replace, and now he's got to come back up, because if he stays here, he's swept himself and now I've passed his guard. So as soon as he starts to recognize that he's lost the lever control, if he's savvy to the position, he's going to get back up. So again, he backsteps, I hide, he rolls through, I immediately pummel in. As long as my heel makes it somewhere in here. You notice how Matt is trying to go back to the crab right now? That's a possibility. As long as my foot stays here, I'm managing the distance, I'm pummeling in, he just resets, and I continue to play guard. So it's a pretty simple pummeling exercise. The foot goes in. If I can't get to his crotch, I go into the pit of the knee or the thigh, and I try to pummel the other leg in. I'm basically just doing that until I can step on his hip or his crotch, push him away. Those are the two things that we need to do to perform the rolling pass negation. This is a bold move, right? Like people aren't just gonna try this out of the blue unless they're pretty familiar with inversions, back takes, bolos, crab rides, stuff like that. So you should have a pretty good indicator that someone's going to attempt this just based on their game and kind of like some exposure to it. But if you get caught out just kind of out of the blue, as long as you just recognize the motions and have some training yourself, like obviously if we're teaching you any kind of De La Riva based stuff, there's going to be some inversion, there's going to be some back take, some bolo type stuff. So once you recognize it, especially if you're really good at kind of like doing that rolling back attack count, so utilizing that is going to keep you safe against these kind of like rolling pass attempts. Okay, we're calling this one the stupid backstep, because frankly not a great idea to try to backstep this. If I were just playing De La Riva guard and you had the option of like shedding the De La Riva hook and backstepping, this is a possibility, right? However, with the clamp that the Mantis guard utilizes, if Matt tries to backstep, even if I just do nothing else, there's not a whole lot going on here. Especially once I add the frame and start inverting through, he's just swept himself, right? So really, That's all I need to do, especially against somebody who's actually like devoted to the back step, really trying to drop their hip to the mat. As long as I keep my forearm framing through and my shin in, I'm going to be able to sweep it. So let's just kind of go over the rudimentary version of this. So somebody tries to back step through, I just keep my hand here, but like drop your hip to the mat like a, yeah, exactly. Drop your hip right to the mat. There we go, yeah. I just invert, keeping my knee in, extract my leg. I can keep this hook here, making sure that he can't get up and attempt to pass. So that's if somebody's like really kind of careless, frankly, does a stupid back step, drops his hip right to the mat. They shouldn't do that. But there's a version of this that's maybe not quite as stupid, where somebody starts the back step, but doesn't drop their hip to the mat. He steps, I don't know, this doesn't feel quite right. I'm still gonna start to invert through, but in this case, he's not sweeping himself, he's staying in base. I'm gonna complete the inversion, my hand is gonna come to the knee, I'm moving myself into that near side X guard, launching my partner, attempting to finish a sweep. Again, even under these circumstances where it's not like a catastrophic error where you've just swept yourself for no reason, it's not a great idea to try to backstep this guard. But in the development phase, you might not know that, right? So you could get like a panic response where you're trying to hold the mantis, somebody backsteps on you, you're like, oh man, you let go, you start framing, and now all of a sudden, maybe you high leg, and he goes to the other side. Like, there are all kinds of stuff, there are all kinds of stuff, geez. There are all kinds of things that could happen if you're just not like wary enough or aware enough. As long as you're keeping this clamp, right, they can't really pass your guard. And as long as I've got good frames and I'm maintaining this hook, or even if I don't have this hook and I've just got a good frame, you can't really go anywhere. I can just start inverting. You know, again, if I wanted to, I've got my leg entanglements on this side. If I wanted to, I can start to come in behind, try to move myself into some different attacks. Like, there's so much I can do just because there's no way that my partner is immediately passing my guard because of the nature of that clamp. So just develop some confidence in the clamp and just follow with some framing and inversion, and you should be fine. Okay, we need to just quickly cover defending the crab ride. So we gave you like how to deal with sort of like rolling passes and like bolo type stuff, but there's a version of this, and we're gonna have a separate video on like when somebody just dumps their hip. So if somebody just drops to their hip and stays there, we're gonna kind of cover that. But if somebody sits down and moves into the crab ride, this is actually kind of a legit thing. If he can get underneath here and roll through, and then there's two potential controls. There's like this joystick control with the wedge hook, or there's the X control here, right? Either of these can lead to like finish the attack here, Matt. So he can go to the twister hook with this one and take my back that way, or if we go back into the joystick control, he can take my back that way. So finish that one, pushes me to there, uses the wedge hook, there you go. So there's a couple of variants there that you might run into. The answer to this is leg pummeling. So if we end up here, Matt drops down and starts to roll through. As he makes, let's say, there we go. As he makes the joystick control, I need to block, pummel my foot inside to block his hip. Once I achieve this, I've got the inside position, and anything else he does is going to be compromised by my lever control to here. This, continue to kind of rally with me, this will usually slip free, and as long as I keep my feet by his hips, he kind of has to bail and try to come back on top. He's lost the lever control, and he's lost the hip elevation. Those are the two things that he needs to maintain in the crab ride. Right? So if we go to that X hook, so he rolls under. When he has the X hook, it's even simpler because I just pummel my foot in right away. I had a free leg, and I pummel my foot in. Anytime he gets back into where he needs to be, let's say he switches to the joystick control, I block it, I get my foot inside. If he goes back to the X hook, I just get my foot back inside to his hip, block, disengage. As long as my feet are inside of this space, I'm relatively safe. As long as my feet are outside and not touching his hips, he can attack my back or come up on top. Like if I'm really over defending the back here, he'll just push me over and just come up on top. Alright, so you don't ever want to just be the person who's like, no, I won't let you take my back, I'll do this. Well, then I'm just exposing side control. So a little bit of leg pummeling, making sure that you know to frame on the hip or access the inside space where you're pushing on the levers to the hip, and that should take care of the crab ride. Obviously, it's not as simple as we're making it look. First of all, he's letting me do it. If we're actually doing this live, it would be a pretty significant battle. But if you don't know that you need to have that battle, then you're going to lose it every time. So this is a skill that you need to cultivate. And on the flip side, your partner is going to be cultivating their skill at the crab ride, like inversions to the back. So again, I think we've talked about elsewhere, or if we haven't yet, we will later on in this series, about how many different options there are from that position and how good this guy is for learning that. Get on it, after you master the Mantis guard and the Nogi del Hiva stuff. All right, now that we've covered our basic retention, our basic kuzushi, all that kind of stuff, where you're maintaining the Mantis guard, and we've given you again, like we did with the Nogi del Hiva, a basic sweep that you can use to sort of establish your credibility. Now we're going to get into our sweeps and attacks that are more aggressive in nature, where we're potentially threatening the back or finishing submissions if somebody overposts, and that's going to, again, create a kind of a unified system where you've understood how to get to the Mantis, you've understood how to control it, prevent the passes, deal with them if they come, and then you've got your kuzushi, and you're moving into your basic sweeps, and then your partner's response, your opponent's response to that will give you the opportunities for these more high percentage, direct to finish type attacks, and that's what's to come starting now. All right, our first sort of more advanced sweep that we're going to be doing out of the Mantis guard is going to involve using the kind of like the X guard. We call it a dick post. I'll explain a little bit more in a second. So when I do manage to get my partner to step, but I'm not able to grab this ankle. He's either stepped farther out, or maybe my arms are a little bit too short. However, whatever the case may be, I'm going to transition this leg to the inside, and I've got to lift my partner's leg up a little bit. You can feel free to put your hands on the mat. We don't have to do yoga here for the next couple minutes. So I was starting with my leg outside here. If I just try to put my leg underneath, exactly, you can try to block it. So as I start to bring this leg in, I'm going to lift with my arm, and I'm going to place my foot in the crease of your hip here, all right? Transitioning basically into the X guard style, where I'm holding the kneecap, turning, closing my elbow and keeping my shoulder and kind of jaw, ear area pinned together to create this vice. I'm leg pressing, and we're going to go over the same kind of dick post X in a couple of future videos, but I'm leg pressing you away, and I can also add a leg press here with this foot, kind of depending on where your weight is moving, and then I can start to build up. So now I've replaced the dick post with the post behind your knee pit. Come up. And you can start to go single unders pass. Most likely your partner will just reestablish some kind of guard throughout the sweep sequence. But that's the first thing that we address when we're not able to do our basic sweeps. Our basic sweeps are that tripod or that taint sweep where we're managing to catch the other ankle. Anytime I can catch both of your ankles, I'm just going to sweep you outright. There's not anything you can do when you've just got your hands on the mat and I'm completely controlling the levers to your hips. So that's kind of our more basic attack, when somebody's able to either spread out or, again, relative height. I'm fairly tall, so I don't often have a lot of trouble getting this, but those of you that are familiar with any of the material that I've put out on the bjjconcepts.net with Rory, giant lanky weirdo who's actually taller than I am, when I kick him here, his leg ends up over there, right? So I'm elevating and I'm putting my foot underneath. Right. Just a terminology distinction. The reason we're not calling this a taint sweep is the taint sweep stuff tends to come more from underneath, and this is more in front, where my heel tends to kind of crush your member, which is why we gave it the name that we did. Foot can come here, or I can simply keep the foot in and come up to this position.
I feel like I should have an anatomically correct doll that you could point to explain where you touched me while sweeping me with the taint sweep versus the dick post sweep.
Okay, so our first attack from the reverse knee buckle is going to be a back take attempt. Hopefully a successful one. Again, either my partner straightened their leg out and I moved into this and I buckled their knee, or they were giving me too much pressure and I got them to here. But once we land, if my partner's knee is on the ground and I'm here, I'm going to look to shrug, put this Y block in my partner's knee pit and start to come up. If he's like trying to get up and run away, I have to keep this knee really heavy until I get to here, and then I have to have this crotch lock mechanism. So my left arm is staying in here, my right hand is connected with a gable grip, and I'm still really tight on this ankle. If I'm not tight on this ankle, he's just gonna be able to yank that leg away and sit to his guard. So let's rewind. I'm tight on the ankle, I'm controlling the hip here. This hook starts to come in, and I'm gonna start to tilt my partner back with my knee staying really tight here. Again, if I've got the leg dexterity, I can perform this transfer like so. If I don't have the leg dexterity to do that, I step first, and then I shift my leg in. We're basically in the truck now. I continue to control this as I migrate to the ankle, My partner's gonna keep that elbow closed. I'm gonna come over top, feet together, pull him towards me, scoot my hip back, start to attack the back. Give you a slightly different angle here. Let's say in this case, my partner cheated a little bit to this side. I shifted, brought them forward, and if I don't get my partner's knee to the ground, I don't try this. If this knee stays here, we're gonna have some different options for you. But the assumption is we got my partner's knee to the ground, I came out the back, I grabbed the hip. I'm still keeping my shins pinched here, so if he tries to run away, he's not going anywhere. I'm attached the levers to his hip. I come up, grab the crotch, connect, stick my hook in. I tilt him towards me, keep his hip elevated, and I attempt to make this transfer. If I can't make this transfer for whatever reason, I launch him a little bit forward by like pushing my hamstring towards the ground while bringing my knee towards me, and then I back my foot up, stepping on the knee pit. This allows me to comfortably set this hook. If my partner's arm is open, I immediately grab it. A lot of people will leave this wide open, especially when they're just filming an instructional because they're being lazy. But if they're a little bit less asleep at the switch, I'm gonna have to grab inside here. I guess the most efficient way to do this is to keep, if his hip is loaded up to kind of my right side, is to keep my right hand on his ankle while I connect to his left hand. If I go with the right hand first, I'm just gonna have to switch and do this anyway. So if I keep my right hand here and just grab with my left, I'm saving myself a little bit of motion, a little bit of trouble. I push him, get my arm underneath, I build to my elbow. I scoop my hip back, set the hook. He's gonna have his defense set, so we're usually gonna end up with our seatbelt and having to do a little bit of hand fighting before we can get to the rear naked choke. But it's a pretty suitable way of taking the back, as long as you're, again, familiar with those kind of like rolling back attack, truck style attacks, because all we're doing is setting ourselves up into this like crotch lock position, which if you want to see like a lot more information, back take that you can utilize from that reverse knee buckle. Okay, so we've covered our basic knee buckles. This is our reverse knee buckle. So the basic knee buckles where we manage to turn our partner's knee in this way, like the leg that's inside of the Mantis guard. We manage to buckle that knee and we can attack the back from this angle. However, in some circumstances where we extend our partner this way and they lock their leg out and we're not able to buckle the knee, we will move here and buckle the knee this way. This is called a reverse knee buckle. Sometimes I'll end up on my shoulder, sometimes I'll end up on my elbow. We'll go over that in subsequent videos. But the other scenario where this will occur is if we're in the Mantis guard and I can't get my partner's weight to this side, I can't establish a kuzushi in that direction, in particular because my partner's kind of turning the knee this way. Yeah, exactly. This makes it very difficult to take my partner in that direction, but because of the overcompensation, I can set myself to the center, and we'll go over a little detail with the hand in a second on that. I can set myself to center and buckle my partner's knee in this direction. So I can move to that reverse knee buckle based on a couple of different responses. The hand detail here is that if I stay with the deep kind of shin grip with my Mantis guard, if Matt turns his knee out, kind of sets his base real low, if I just try to go here, like I'm taller and I'm still having a really hard time reaching this far leg, I need to slide my hand down and extend my body away. So I was biceps deep, I'm gonna move to forearm deep. I'm still clamping really tight. Like I can't just be like this because just yank your leg out. Should be obvious, but bears pointing out. Now yank your leg out. I'm really anchored in there. Now that I've made that adjustment to center, my hand can come in, my right foot can migrate to his crotch, I can hoist him a little bit, I can move myself into here. This allows me to start buckling his knee, and there are going to be a whole like host of attacks that we'll be pursuing from there. All right? Important when we do this that we're actually attempting the regular knee buckle and the kuzushi to the one side. If all I'm doing ever is just like, oh, I don't have to learn any of that stuff, let me just go here, your partner's gonna have way more of an answer. So I do have to start out by like, I'm trying to move him, he's recovering. That's when I go to the reverse knee buckle. It's not something you just kind of launch, it's something that has to exist within the context of your normal kuzushi attempts, your attempts to take the back to that direction, to sweep with the X guard to that direction, and then your partner's response is going to be a little bit of an overcompensation because of the initial threat. If there's no initial threat, there's no overcompensation, there's no driving of their weight to that side, there's no shift in their center of gravity that you can exploit. And if you're dealing with a bigger opponent or somebody with just really good base and weight distribution, you'll have a very hard time the other direction, and then you can employ this reverse knee buckle. Okay, now that we've covered how we're going to use that dick post X to come up on a sweep, one of the things that you got to be aware of is that when you do this kuzushi and you kick someone out, some people will turn their knee in, but also, if we come back for a second, I'm trying to induce that turn. I'm not always just trying to kick you here and keep this leg straight. I'm trying to roll my arm and my leg across to put your knee past the line of my thighs.
There's a lateral pressure here.
Exactly.
Which I could probably resist.
You can resist, and you're going to often, like, you know, once
which will give you your sweeps.
Right, will give me some of my sweeps, or it'll turn us into, like later on, we'll be going over like a reverse knee buckle, but this is a regular knee buckle. So as I kick you out, if I manage to buckle that knee inside, as long as I'm holding onto my shin here, there's no way that you can come back. Like once I've sunk your knee through this line, you're not coming back. I'm going to transition my grip to that bunion, big toe kind of end of the lever. And you can see how this is ratcheting your hip towards the mat. I can now switch my hand to grab your left hip, and I'm going to kick you out, keeping my right hook in, and then taking your back. This is one of my primary attacks from here, and it really, like, we found that it takes somebody who's, you know, familiar with the position and quite good at immediately extending their leg to prevent that from happening. So again, as part of, let's say I got that kuzushi where I pulled you here, I kicked you out, you can see kind of how easy it is for that to happen under these circumstances. You don't always have to make this switch. It's quite possible to just kick the person out, but, you know, again, it's no gi, we get a bit greasy, people are athletic, so it's a really good idea as you can rotate someone into here to make this switch, because now I can control you as I sit up. My right leg is hooking across to your left knee. If I didn't have that, you would be able to spin, like roll over. Yeah, exactly. And then like I'd still come up on a sweep. As long as I pummel my leg inside and don't leave a leg entanglement available to you, I'm fine. But this is such a superior position that if I just keep control of both levers to the hip, I control your rotation. And you know, we've talked about you know, in the BJJ formula, the idea of direct rotational control and lever-based rotational control. But rotational control in general is something I'm seeking in jiu-jitsu. I want to either prevent you from turning or induce you to turn. I want to control where you turn. So this specific sequence where once I kick you out, buckle your knee, and then grab here, as long as I can keep this
here.
Yeah, this here.
Yeah.
So I've got this ratchet style lever where I can turn your hip to the mat, and then I control your hip to prevent you from kind of going over me once I kick you out. As I start to extend my left shin, I release, and my right heel curls in towards your hip. My left leg disappears out the back. You end up dropping into position. I can take your back and attack the rear naked choke.
That's really cool, but I'd just bite your forearm in self-defense.
Okay, we need to cover the reverse knee buckle moving into the 411. Although the 411 is not the only eventuality here, depending on where my partner's leg ends up on my shoulder, it might be like an inside ashi reap style position. So again, like I'm in the Mantis guard, my partner's cheating with their knee a little bit, I transition, I kick them over, and their knee comes down to the mat. I'm gonna withdraw this leg and set it in my partner's knee pit. It can be the outside edge of my heel with my heel, the outside edge of my foot with my heel this way, or it can be the outside edge of my foot with my heel out that way. Both are fine. And now if his leg stays on this side, I prefer this a little bit, by the way, just the alignment of my leg. If my partner's leg stays on this side, as I elevate my hip and insert, I can move them into an inside ashy reap style position. Whereas if in this motion, as I perform this like reverse knee buckle, so we end up here, I switch this. If I manage to bring this leg over, now we're moving into the 411. When we do, we grab the big toe here, right, around the bunion area. And so if Matt were to try to like go that way, I'm preventing that and just dropping him. He's already kind of in a heel hook here, just like the pressure from this. Then my hand is going to go inside and dig. If he were to roll successfully this way, I would still be holding this, rolling through and trying to stomp him into that stomp 411. Again, keeping this, the hand will come through, grab the knee. We'll give you another angle in a second. Grab the knee, reinforce it, then dig and finish. So let's start from this side here. If I get myself into this reverse knee buckle position and I pop my head out right away, climb through to here. I'm grabbing that big toe. My arm is already stuck inside here, so I can't go with like the overhook variation. It's because my arm is stuck underneath. I grab the big toe and I reinforce it. Try to roll that way. It is not happening. I'm going to extend my hip and bring him back to this side. Still keeping this, and immediately finish. When I finish, I'm going to sit up onto my elbow, and I'm going to shrug my shoulders, opening my hip out, triangling my legs a little bit. I don't want to leave this, again, we've covered this material before, I don't want to leave this out here. I want to make sure he can't like yank it across. So I'm going to triangle my legs a little bit. We can also put this foot underneath here. This is something that Craig Jones really favors, but as long as I'm on my elbow, and I start to rock back, I'm going to be finishing pretty quickly. Alternately, we'll end up all the way on the strong side. I'm no longer on my elbow. I rock back, shrugging, bringing my chin to my shoulders, bringing my thumb to my chin, and extending to take all the slack out before attempting to bridge into the finish. So again, it doesn't really matter which side you end up on. If we do the rear knee buckle and my partner's leg stays on this side, so let's put the knee to the ground. My partner's leg stays on this side. I bring this leg out and I insert the foot. My hand will now come underneath. I'm still holding the knee and I can start to finish as long as I can get my partner's knee. Let's just rotate a little bit more. Do it that way. As long as I can get my partner's knee to the mat and use my thigh to block it, I should be able to start to belly down and finish. And if I can't finish here, which I shouldn't expend a lot of energy attempting to finish here, I'm just going to force the roll. I'm going to hot dog roll. I've already got my grip and I'm extending to stop him from going anywhere. I'm going to rock up onto my elbow as I hip in, and that's going to allow me to finish. So mostly we want the 411 just because it's always a far more reliable finish than moving into the inside ashy and attacking an outside heel hook. However, you may not always be able to make the transfer, so both are available. Yeah, it's a little bit of 6 of one, half dozen of the other as to what you end up with, but if you can choose, definitely choose the 411. It's a superior finish. Okay, now we need to go over a potential variation where we go to the reverse knee buckle and we're trying to climb the back, but our partner like kind of rolls over and dumps their hip. So it's going to end up in the leg drag. When we move through the Mantis guard, let's say again this way, I got my little bit of a kazushi, he straightens his leg out, I move back in here, I get the reverse knee buckle to happen, I can start to block with that Y motion, and I start to come up to here, and he just rolls over. As he rolls over, I'm just going to keep my knee pinning, and I'm going to put my hand on the mat. This is just going to move me into the leg drag. So I'm doing a little windshield wiper here. And I'm keeping the knee pinned, and I just windshield wiper across, and he's just rolled over and put himself in the leg drag. It's not a great solution, like for the uke or your opponent, your training partner. However, it's better than getting your back taken under a lot of circumstances. So if we end up here, and I get to this, the knee is down. I go to here, I start to go, he rolls. I just make sure that I keep that leg stapled. As he completes the roll, I windshield wiper, then I move myself into the leg drag. You're often going to be pretty far behind the defense. So the arm triangle reverses EKL or these kind of claw ride style back takes are going to be pretty available. Bottom line is, if you use the reverse knee buckle and you get someone's knee to the ground, they're in a lot of trouble. They really are going to need to kind of keep their knee off the ground, in which case we're going to have to kind of come up on our wrestling, which we've gone over in like some other videos. But anytime someone's knee gets to the ground, you can pin it there. You've got the levers to the hip. Once you duck your head out the back, a back take should be such a major threat that any other response to like avoid the back take should still give you a pretty significant advantage deep into a pass, deep into an arm triangle, all that kind of stuff. So as long as you can perform this windshield wiper motion, you should be pretty good. You should be avoiding any kind of leg entanglements. Like, let's just make sure that we're aware. Let's go through this one more time. How this could go wrong if you're not pretty particular with your leg positioning. We end up here, I duck out the back, and he rolls, and maybe I leave my leg in here. Like, that could happen, right? So just be aware that we're always keeping our shins in the pit of the knee. We're keeping our shins like, this kind of stuff. Anything that involves any sort of leg entanglement, I'm always just making sure that or potential leg entanglement, I'm making sure that my shin stays in the pit of my partner's knee, moving myself safely into the leg drag, and never leaving my leg dangling for any kind of potential leg entanglements, outside ashy, those kinds of finishes. So just be disciplined with your feet. Make sure you're windshield wipering properly, and you should be just fine. All right, this is another leg drag from the rear knee buckle, reverse knee buckle. So you might recall, if you've watched the Nogi De La Riva material, the Corolla position, where I've moved myself from here to here and then pulled my partner down. So with the Corolla position, I'm behind my partner's leg to start with. With the reverse knee buckle, what will occasionally happen is my partner will sit to their butt or drop to their back, but I'll be in front of their leg. So we will have ended up going through, Mantis, we will have ended up going through this, and my partner, instead of tilting forward, like Matt's got a pretty good, proper response here, he keeps his base up. Some people here will just sit to their butt and fall down. So we'll end up in the reverse knee buckle position rather than the Corolla position, where my partner's leg is over, my partner's leg will be under, but it's a similar leg configuration. My shin is in the pit of the knee, my hand will be underneath here in the Mantis grip, and we end up like this. So we are going to still try to move ourselves into the leg drag. We're going to extend and replace and move ourselves to here. My partner is feeling a pretty solid groin stretch, so he's not going to eject too much as I swim this arm in. As we discussed in the Corolla kind of version, if he makes the error of building up to his hands and moving forward, I'm just going to float him and take his back. So he's not going to do that, right? What he is going to be trying to do is scoot his hips away from me. And we talked about that in that Corolla version, where if somebody puts this knee down, I've got to abandon that knee, build my base, and rotate them. That's a very likely result in this scenario. So just go on your back. We landed in the reverse knee buckle. We're here. We've got the Mantis grip. I release the Mantis grip. I pummel my leg in. I bring my knee inside, so I'm starting to stretch him out. I start to bring my hand underneath. As I do, he hip escapes, puts his knee to the ground. I don't worry about that. I just start extending that lever away. I use my hands to push me up and circle me around behind his leg so that I can insert my elbow into this gap. I've got myself into the leg drag position. I can attempt to finish. If this is exposed, I definitely take the arm triangle or the back take. If the frame is here, I can disconnect, redirect, or I can change the angle to finish. Either way, it's a pretty similar movement. You're just starting with the Mantis instead of the De La Riva, and the leg in behind your neck rather than in front. But the end result is the same. It's just you're much more likely to have to deal with that knee to the ground and use the opposite side lever to rotate your partner's hips as you move around them. But either way, you're ending up in the same place, which is the leg drag, which is a good place to be. Okay, we need to go over the Mantis version of the shotgun. So if you are recalling, or if you've maybe just watched the Nogi Nogi De La Riva shotgun stuff, it's where I'm stepping on my partner's hip. And again, this attack tends to happen if you're a little bit lower in a squat, where I've got this shelf that I can put my instep on. So the basic shotgun from the Nogi De La Riva guard involves me elevating, firing my leg through to your knee, and then rotating to bend or buckle your knee. In the case of the Mantis, because I'm a little bit closer when I step, and again here, like, I'll be stepping on the thigh, but there's a fair bit of like contact with my heel of the junk in this particular variation. But the shotgun motion now, as I elevate, my butt is staying by the knee just like before, and there's two ways this can go. My foot, and we'll give you the other angle, my foot can go below as my top leg makes the X, or my foot can go high and my top leg will make the X underneath. And we end up in this sort of elevated position where I'm planking and my butt is against the side of your knee, but I'm keeping the Mantis hook. We'll be doing some stuff with this where we connect our hands, and as I drop my butt and pull, we end up in this X position, exposing the back. We'll also go over a version where we just roll through to get on top, but it's important to be able to get here, and it's important to understand what your body is doing in terms of like rigidity, because let's just turn a little bit more so people can see what the X with my feet, how that's happening. So as I elevate, again, I can go low, or sorry, high with my shotgun leg and make the X underneath, or I can go low with my shotgun leg and make the X above. In either case, I need to be able to keep myself here. If I relax the tension and I slide down, I mean, this is really nothing, right? Once I get below your knees, I don't have that same style of control. So again, if you're in that little bit of a squat, I come up, go 1, 2, and I'm keeping my butt pressing against your knee while I extend my legs and squeeze my thighs together. I should be able to pull myself, like see how when I started to pull myself up, all of my weight all of a sudden was hanging off of your knee while providing lateral pressure. So depending on how big I am, how much mass I've got around my, my waist, and how strong your legs are, there is a potential for, again, just a lot of lateral pressure on the knee, which as we've talked about in the Nogi de la Hiva section, the danger to your knee of a human being hanging off of it and moving sideways is so much greater than the danger to your knee from a reap. Partially because there's basically no danger to your knee from a reap, but partially because this is a little bit of a real threat. So
it actually felt safer when you had the underhook because it
stabilizes it.
Yeah, and it provided incentive for me to rotate the knee the correct way to stay
That's
safe.
right. We're going to kind of go over how we're maneuvering in this position, because at a certain point, what will happen, especially when somebody's really insistent on not being moved, when we get here and here, is I'm actually going to take my hands on the mat and move myself up, right? So, and again, I know you could probably punch me in the face right now, but I also don't really think so.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of weight suspended right over the knee joint. Either I'm up on my hands, or I'm underneath, or I'm moving around. In any case, when you're drilling this, when you're learning it, make sure that your training partners understand, make sure that you understand that you should not be messing around with lateral pressure on the knee. This is the reason that the Kanabasami flying scissors is banned in judo. This is the reason that jumping guard is, like jumping closed guard is banned at white belt and in jiu-jitsu in certain tournaments, just because any kind of ballistic, body weight against the knee, it's a little bit dangerous. So we're not jumping, so there's no like threat of me suddenly injuring your knee. It's more on the part of the person receiving the technique.
Will not bend.
Yeah, exactly. So there's a level of just obstinance that you have to take these sorts of risks with your knees while you're learning a technique. So this might just be kind of a Darwin thing, where like those kinds of people are just meant to buy cars for their orthopedic surgeons, and any warning I give is wasted on them. But if you're kind of in the gray area of that category, please keep your knee safe. As soon as you feel that lateral pressure, just allow your knee to come down. Have anything to fear from someone being on your back. Okay, now that we've established what the shotgun X position looks like, let's go over our back take, which is going to be the more kind of common attack here. So if I manage to, or if I don't manage to get you moved around where I'm using my typical Kuzushi sweep type attacks, I'll be stepping on your hip, I'll be elevating my butt above your knee. You don't have to put your hand on the mat. I'm doing it because it's helpful to do this in slow motion, but certainly if you need to, go right ahead. Again, the X can go
high, low, or low, high, whatever's more comfortable for you, whatever's more situational. And if I manage to maintain this underhook and I add my hand here, as I extend my legs, I end up buckling your knee, and I've still got this X, and it will have slid down around your knee at this point. I'll keep the underhook, I'll grab your hip, and I'll start to remove this leg and scoot back. Again, kind of crucial that I control this, because if I let this go, you could roll, and I might even get leg lock. If I'm not aware of how to leg pummel in that situation, I want to make sure that we're controlling. So let's just rewind to the beginning. So I got myself to Mantis, then I go shotgun X, I buckle you, I come up and I grab your hip, and now this leg comes out, and I've basically got you. I've got like that spiral ride type grip that we normally use to attack the back. This foot in base scoots back while this heel contracts against your hip. I shoot my seatbelt, I shoot my second hook, I shoot the choke, and I finish. The second variation is going to come from when we go to the shotgun X, but we're not able to buckle our partner's knee. So we're in the Mantis, we fire here, we can't buckle the knee because it's turning outwards. If I've got a good clamp here, as I start to build up to my hands and swing the knee, he'll land on top of me with this X configuration still, and I have to capture my partner's hip with my hands. There'll be a variation we go over later where we come up on top, but as long as I catch my partner here, I start to extend away, now I've got my back take. I remove this leg, again, depending on which way you had the X configuration, but it's always going to be, if I was playing my Mantis with my left leg, the left leg is coming out. The right leg is staying, putting my hook in, and then attacking the back the rest of the way.
You're letting go, you're coming up on your hands, and you're walking towards my front.
Yes, you certainly can buckle people without walking towards the front. That's kind of like the extreme version of it where someone's like really trying to stay up and they're bigger than you. Generally speaking, once you get yourself here and start to pull, the knee tends to buckle pretty quickly. All right, so that's the more common scenario. Again, we're grabbing the hip, extending our partner out, curling our heel in, walking back slightly, and then attacking the back as we commonly would. It really just depends whether there was enough weight this way to get the knee to buckle, or as we swing, the knee starts to turn. Because you can't really take too many steps.
No.
Your knees are kind of bound together by my entire body, so you can take these little steps, but I will be able to circle around you quite a bit quicker. And once that happens, you'll start to fall. I just have to be wary when this happens. Again, in the next video, we'll go over how to easily get on top. But when somebody starts to fall towards you, provided they're not just dropping directly to the back, you've got to be ready to catch them, right? Like I'm coming up, I'm moving, we're falling, I catch you. I basically create a basket between my knees and my forearms, and then I'm kicking you out, putting the other hook in, attacking the back.
I'm glad you covered that.
All right, when we establish the shotgun X position and we're trying to buckle that knee and go to the back, occasionally people will get the bright idea to do a forward roll, and then sometimes they'll fall backwards. We're going to cover both of these scenarios and how we're going to follow up and go to the top. So I get into like my shotgun X, and then you're going to do like a forward shoulder roll. Exactly. I follow up, and I'm going to extract this leg. And now when we do it in slow motion, it might look like you can get to the mount. But realistically, at the end of this position, or at the end of this situation, we're going to end up in like a quarter guard or three-quarter mount, as I prefer to refer to it. And you know, in a self-defense scenario, that's what we would do, obviously. So just break that down one more time. Again, shotgun X comes out of somebody in a little bit of a squat. If they're up too tall, we're not going to have enough of a platform usually to do this. We'll slide off, right? Butt against the knee, make the X. As they start to roll, we follow it. My hands come out. I'm going to extend my right leg, because if I don't do that, pinch your knees together for a second, my legs are kind of caught. So as the roll happens, I'm extending this leg and taking this leg out, which brings us into that, you know, three-quarter. If somebody doesn't know anything about jiu-jitsu, sure, you're just going to mount them. Anyone who does
is going to keep your ankle, and you're going to have to go through whatever else to free your leg or roll like I just did. The other scenario we're going to deal with is somebody dropping backwards. Occasionally, when we're in this shotgun X position and I'm seeking the back, so I get here and I'm trying to pull you towards me, you just end up falling backwards. Exactly. I keep your leg in this case. I'm keeping that biceps deep grip.
You're keeping my leg with your arm.
With my left arm here, exactly.
Yeah,
Right.
so I can't pull the damn thing out.
Exactly. I'm going to start to extend my right leg again, and I keep that kind of like outward hip torque motion. And this is a scenario where I may be able to free my leg, but again, most likely you'll still keep this leg pretty bound up. We're going to end up coming up into that 3/4 mount. Strikes, loogies, guillotines, all kinds of attacks are available. This is the less likely of the two scenarios, unless you're dealing with people who are just unfamiliar, unskilled, and just tend to, and also frankly, there are a lot of jiu-jitsu folks who don't try to stay standing and stay in base. There's a lot of jiu-jitsu folks that as soon as you move them around a little bit, they fall to their butt or they roll over because they think that like rolling stuff is a solution to everything. So against those people, you just got to be prepared. You got to be prepared to extend your leg to prevent them from pinching their knees a little bit. Keep the ankle if necessary, and just pretty much roll and get on top. There's actually less to this than it seems. That the little details are more important for finishing in a dominant position. If somebody chooses to fall down or roll, really all you have to do is go with it and come up on top. All right, it's time to go over some troubleshooting for the Mantis guard position. The techniques we've gone over so far have been sweeps and back takes. However, the submissions in this position are going to come from people overcommitting to what we call active posting. So if you've seen any of our previous material in this series, we're talking about Nogi de la Hiva or just any of the other material we've done in the past. Active posting is just when someone's putting their hands on the mat, moving them around to keep their base. So under those scenarios, and then occasionally somebody dropping their knee down into combat base, we're gonna have to change up our attacks a little bit. We're gonna have some guillotines, there's an omoplata variation, and we're gonna give you some troubleshooting on actually like getting the knee to buckle in the standard knee buckle. Obviously the reverse knee buckle is kind of a different situation. That's just gonna happen as a consequence of somebody straightening their leg or posting. But when we're trying to get IBJJF legality. Okay, our first troubleshooting item is going to be the posting on the knee. We talked about this in the Nogi de la Hiva section. This is way less of an issue in the Mantis guard. Just to quickly give some context, if you haven't watched the other clip, if Stefan's posting on my knee here, this actually shuts down my Nogi de la Hiva guard, so I have to respond with that omoplata style attack. In the Mantis guard, you posting on my knee is not that much of an issue. I could just ignore this and continue to rock you around. So, when we say troubleshooting, this is like a pretty minimal amount of trouble. This is more like an opportunity for me to attack you. So if you do end up starting to do that posting, I'm hooking inside and I'm gonna pull. So I don't want this kind of grip. This is gonna be very weak. I want here and I want to pull across. And as we talked about in the Nogi version, if your knee and your elbow are connected at this point, there's no omoplata, which is where, again, the Mantis guard is kind of an advantage here, because in the Nogi de la Hiva guard, if I do this and I can't omoplata you, then I'm still a little bit open, right? Whereas here, if I get this pull and you maintain the elbow connection, it's not a big deal. We've just returned to neutral. But if the pull is enough to separate your knee from your elbow, I'm still trying to extend, and now I'm going to release the Mantis grip. My hips are going to shoot up, and as we talked about earlier, I don't want to move into this kind of like gi style omoplata, because just posture up and I'll step. The grips are not going to be enough. So when I shoot my hip up, I'm making sure that I turn my knee and I jam your hand down. You're going to have to either fall, in which case I can finish on the omoplata by scooting my hips away, coming in, connecting to like a seatbelt, and leaning forward with my right foot in base. Or you'll do what's more likely in the situation, which is to forward roll to preserve your shoulder. So, again, I lift up, and I'm keeping this hook so that when you roll, there's no option of you doing that helicopter, falling on top of me, rolling to the other side. If I weren't to control this, there'd be the potential of you doing this, all right? So I'm controlling your leg,
I'm gonna withdraw my knee. We're gonna go over this, similarly in another video where we use the omoplata to now come to the arm bar, but that's usually what I do with it. Right foot goes in base, left shin comes across, pinning the shoulder. I'm gripping the back of the elbow. I'm doing that, Dylan and Schwarzenegger, you son of a bitch, bro handshake from Predator, and I'm hipping in. If I lose the elbow, no big deal. Withdraw my foot, come up. We can calf slice, we can bicep slice if you're above brown belt, or you can just kick the leg out, come up on top of side control. It's a really good option that's a necessity in the no-gi de la Riva guard. It's a luxury and a target of opportunity in the Mantis guard because you pushing down on my knee isn't really that big a deal. And so just to give you kind of like one last thing, if you're in this scenario and someone's knee posting and you're not able to pull their arm across because they're just a little bit too strong, any grip inside the elbow here flares the arm, allows you to shed that control. Again, they'll pull their arm out of there. That reaction draws their weight back, causes us to go back to our kazushi and pursue the rest of our sweeps, which is what we're always trying to do. Okay, let's talk about guillotines and how they're going to come into play from a troubleshooting perspective with the Mantis guard. We're hopefully going to use guillotines on our opponent rather than have them used against us. But let's just quickly discuss how potentially somebody could access the guillotine if we're a little bit lazy. Well, I shouldn't say a little bit lazy, kind of like incredibly silly with our posture. So if I'm starting with the no-gi de la Riva guard and I elect to move to the Mantis guard where I'm holding the knee pit and I'm scooting my hip back like this, I'm totally fine. I'm not in any danger, right? However, if I attempt to come up like this, which I've seen people do, I've immediately put myself in a guillotine and I'm completely trapped, right? Both my arms are out of the picture, right? This could not be a worse way of going about it. So, our transition into the Mantis guard should never involve us sitting up like this. We've got no base behind us and our posture is completely exposed, right? What we want to do is use the guillotine. So let's say I managed to kind of move you around and you choose to put this knee down. This is something that is going to happen occasionally as people dropping to that knee. Now I can try to come up on a sweep and we'll go over that later on when we talk about people posting on the knee, but I can also sit myself up and start to move myself back. As long as you want to stay up, your hands have to stay on the mat. And you can certainly sweep yourself. But
I mean, to myself, I could do this.
you could just drop, yeah, you could drop to your butt and just
I'm a top fighter.
Exactly. And again, this is one of those areas where rules incentivize behaviors, and in this case, they incentivize bad behaviors. Because if you're in danger of being submitted, it's better to drop to your butt, right? But as I circle this way, I should be able to, because my shoulder, like the good kind of heuristic for the guillotine is my shoulder about line up with the top of your head. If my shoulder is below your head and I were trying to reach, I'd be extending my own arm. But if my shoulder is above your head, I can simply cover your head using gravity, using my weight to break your posture without having to expose a lever or internally rotate my shoulder. So this is my indicator to take my chin strap. Depending on what this arm is doing, I may get an arm in guillotine or I may get a high elbow guillotine, right? If we end up here and you look to bring your arm around, then I may catch the high elbow guillotine in the transition, or your arm may end up around here, in which case I'll catch the arm in guillotine. In either of those guillotines, the basic mechanics are the same. With the high elbow, I'm over the shoulder. With the arm in guillotine, my partner's arm is in my armpit, but I'll be connecting my chin strap. Let's say my partner's arm's across here. I'll be connecting my chin strap. My hand is gripping the edge of the chin strap hand. I'm bringing my elbow towards my own hip. I'm performing some kind of hook, usually like a half guard hook. Occasionally, it'll be the shin across the hip. And then my back leg is coming over top to attempt to prevent the roll as I compress. So I'm compressing my elbow towards my hip while I roll my wrist up into the side of the artery, either in this fashion with the high elbow guillotine or in this fashion with the arm being blocked. At the same time, there's always a possibility, we should kind of address this, of somebody rolling to their back. If they do, that top leg hooking, so for instance, if I'm here, this top leg hook, if you rolled your back, it just pulls me on top of you. And then I hip in to finish. And this isn't really a guillotine tutorial. There's a lot of material out there. I've got some material on my site. There's some really great guillotine practitioners that have put out guillotine instructionals. Josh Hinger
has a really wonderful one.
Well, but yours is pretty damn good. Very damn good. And if people go to grapplearts.com and they search for guillotine choke Rob Biernacki,
Yeah,
they'll find
we
the
did-
article that I stole off the article and videos and tutorials that I stole
That's-
off your site.
That's a good point. I forgot. We actually put the whole thing out on YouTube for free.
Yeah.
So yeah, if you want to like check out the guillotine control module from my online academy, it's about 30 videos. They're on my YouTube channel. They're on Grapple Arts, so you can find them pretty easily. And so yeah, like there's a ton of follow up for this if you want to
All
learn.
the ways to finish this position,
Yeah, get into it. Yeah, exactly. That's so like
control the guy, transition other things.
Yeah, and let's just quickly address when we're in this position where I've got the mantis and you're on your knee, just so that there we go, just so that we're clear. I could also be guillotined here. If so, like Stefan's posting with one hand right now, and his shoulder is above my head. If I start to bring my head in, I could definitely be guillotined. All right. So we just have to just always maintain awareness of that relative posture. Right? Stefan's here. I'm good to go. If he's up a little bit higher, I just would not be going for the guillotine right now. We're gonna have some other solutions for you when it comes to somebody posting on their knee. But like for me to like aim for a guillotine here, I just put myself in an arm triangle. Right? Like that's all of what that would be a really embarrassing thing to have happen. You know, you go for mantis guard, you almost sweep a guy, and then you get arm triangle. So this again, beating a dead horse, but alignment over everything, base posture structure, frames and levers, understand your alignment relative to your opponent's alignment. That's what creates vulnerability for anything to happen successfully against a skilled opponent. Something we need to cover is that under certain circumstances, certain rule sets like sub only, or particularly like in the street, some people will just flop their butt and try to play this like double guard pull position, play a leg pummeling game with you. The simple answer to this is just to keep the mantis guard grip and sit up. Because of the advantage created, and we've talked about this in other videos, where I've got this lever to your hip, you do not have a full like guard option. You can't bring a butterfly hook in, you can't bring any kind of De La Riva hook. So I can simply technical stand up while keeping this lever and now move into my passing. So that's just like sort of the simple solution to this. Depending on which hip, like sometimes people will sit to this hip, right? In which case again, I just back up. In this case, I'm not going to try to stand up just because I'm trying to go over to this side. There might be some problems. You might prevent me from putting this foot in. Yeah, exactly. By bending your knee, you can prevent me from putting this foot in the base. So if your partner does sit to, like in this case, it's Stefan's left hip. So if I'm on my right hip, he's on his left hip, we're in this kind of mirror image position, I'm going to pummel my leg inside and come up. But if they drop to their other hip, then I just put my foot on the mat, I rock up, hand in base, technical stand up, live toes, get this hand ready, depending on, again, if he's just like on his back and getting ready to pull guard, he's going to be trying to bring this knee in exactly, right? So I might use, you can see there, I kind of time that overcompensation of you trying to draw your knee in to do like an X pass, deflection style pass. Again, you're not always going to be able to, but I do think that coming up with the mantis grip gives you a little bit of an advantage to move into your passing. So yeah, anytime somebody flops, depending on what hip they're on, you just technical stand up and complete the sweep. In certain situations, the guillotine will be available here as well, just because if somebody sits to their butt, but keeps their, but keeps their hands on the mat or stays forward, whatever, like you could be trying to grab me, get back, as long as I've got my shoulder above yours, I'm gonna be able to potentially attack the guillotine, but that can be like quite situational. The most common response here, anytime somebody flops, is just to come up, complete the free sweep, and garner your glory. Yeah, one of our other troubleshooting issues we're going to run into is somebody recognizes that there's a potential instability up here, and they're going to post their knee, go into combat face. Usually this will happen with my butterfly hook in, but occasionally it'll happen before I've been able to establish my butterfly hook. We'll kind of go over both scenarios for you. Let's assume that we have the butterfly hook in to begin with. The fact that the butterfly hook is in allows my shin and my femur here to create a really strong frame against Stefan's hip. So it's only so close that he can get. Because I can keep him at a distance, I can now use that same kind of like knee lever that we used in the Kazushi section to just bring the leg off the ground. Frankly, I can just technical stand up from here and complete the sweep. So having the butterfly hook in makes my life way easier.
And again, total banana peel effect.
Totally.
That leg just go,
gone. And then under like a slightly different circumstance, depending on how strong a post you have
On that side, when I go to this, I bring my shin across and come up this way. Right? I'm kind of moving into a knee cut position. Your knee will usually end up here, so I'll have to like figure out how I'm going to pass from there. But depending on where you're kind of stronger and more active with your posts, I'll either be putting my shin into that hip or that hip while I draw your leg back for that kind of banana peel effect. When we end up here and I don't have my butterfly hook in, this sort of scenario, you will be able to kind of drive forward unrestricted. As your knee gets closer and closer, you're loading your weight up more and more, right? Like this is kind of a, it's a misapprehension that people have when they see the Mantis guard, that they think that just driving this knee forward somehow creates any effect. You're just loading your weight up onto me, right? So anytime that knee comes forward, all I have to do is, like I'm using my right foot here for base, so the fact that my leg is not in here allows me to put it on the ground, right?
So you're bridging up and your ass is actually leaving the mat.
Exactly, so your knee comes forward, it just drops you right back down. I can pummel my leg in and technical stand up from here, or I can keep this grip if you were to go to your other hip. So if you land on that hip, I tend to keep the grip. If you land on this hip, I tend to pummel in and get back up. But you can pummel in either way. Like if you end up on that hip, it's certainly not wrong to pummel the leg in and just stand up from here. That's always okay. You're just releasing some of the control.
So putting the foot on the ground and bridging up is one way to compensate for the fact that you're at the limits of your motion already.
Exactly. And then, we kind of talked about this De La Riva X position in the Nogi De La Riva section, but if I find myself here and you're kind of crowding me, if I keep a good frame and I move my hip out, I can move into the De La Riva X style position, which does, sorry about the De La Riva X, the deep De La Riva hook style position, to which I can add the De La Riva X and release the Mantis grip, and then I'll be doing all the same things we did in the De La Riva, like the deep De La Riva X style position, covering your posture, technical stand-up, knocking you over. I can pursue the guillotine. All that kind of stuff is an option. But if we come back, anytime somebody drives this pressure in, my foot, it being in base, my hand posting either on your shoulder or Cosby frame style, hip escape, and deep De La Riva hook will also give us access to those back takes that we did earlier, right? Where we buckle the knee. We're gonna have another video specifically on that, like gable grip and kind of like the legality of it, when it's necessary, when it's not necessary. But the combat base against Mantis guard is a kind of a terrible idea, in my opinion. It takes away any of the substantial threats of the pass while giving me access to a whole bunch of different relatively easy sweeps and attacks. So I wouldn't do it, but a lot of people do. And of course, you're going to get the odd person who's just incredibly solid in combat base and is going to be able to make it work. But I think generally speaking, combat base, just because of the really powerful clamp and lever control here, combat base is not such a great idea. It shifts your center of gravity. I advise against it. Exploit it if you can. All right, we need to talk about the gable grip, how we're going to apply it when we're attempting to use that kind of knee buckle style back take, and also we're going to have to discuss the legality of it in a couple minutes here. So first off, just to clarify what we're talking about, if I get this kuzushi to work, and my partner's leg is really straight, as we talked about earlier, I can't really take the back, so I need this knee to buckle. That's going to happen a lot from me just forcing my knee towards, but if he's still trying to keep his leg fairly straight, if I transition to this gable grip, I can add more torque because I'm reinforcing my hands on closing the circuit. So anytime you're, let's just call that the first part, troubleshooting the back take. If I can't buckle your knee, I'm going to gable grip. You're also going to find from this position, if you're just on your foot here still, is that rather than shooting the full shotgun, we'll just go to here and use the gable grip to pull somebody down. As long as we're keeping our knee on the outside of the hips, we're not really worried or in danger of that kind of back step, knee bar, 411 type thing. So I can attack the back from here by reinforcing that gable grip. So if you're ever having trouble getting that knee to rotate, adding this gable grip is a powerful aid. Now is where the trouble begins. If you're not familiar with what a knee reap is, Stefan, I can get you on your butt here. A knee reap is an imaginary thing that the IBJJF tells you will explode your knee. It's where my foot crosses your hip.
please don't sue me, is where my foot crosses this imaginary line and your knee is forced to turn. So basically the forced internal rotation of the hip and turning of the knee is what they refer to as a knee reap. So, I mean, I know this is bullshit, you know this is bullshit. Really, probably everyone at the IBJJF knows this is bullshit, but inertia is the most powerful force in human affairs, and they'll be damned if they're going to change it now. So what they're also doing is making certain movements that turn the knee in illegal, and frankly, I don't have the time or the inclination to go through every particular little rule in the IBJJF book to know for sure, but it's my suspicion that because the hands are connected here, if there is a deep De La Hiva hook, that this might be considered forcing a knee reap. Whereas if it's just the mantis here like so, and I'm going like this, because my foot is not blocking your hip, this would not be a knee reap. So that's an important distinction, but I'm also not sure.
Yeah.
That's just my inclination, how I think the rule will be interpreted. So if you do care about,
Using this in an IBJJF
in an IBJJF, and frankly, if you're playing a no-gi De La Hiva type guard, I would guess that you're maybe a little more inclined to be competing in the IBJJF rule set, because there's certainly a lot of reasons to play, a more leg lock heavy guard in sub only or whatever. So, I use both, and I'm an advocate of both. I think that the sort of the meta goes in cycles, and I think a lot of people are at this point quite good at negating leg attacks and dealing with leg attacks. So coming in with a strong Mantis guard, no-gi De La Hiva guard, not a lot of people are playing no-gi De La Hiva. We're going to talk a little bit in the future about or later on in the series, about the reverse De La Hiva and how it's kind of like the standard no-gi open guard, at least among modern guards. So I do think there's a tremendous advantage to be gained under all rule sets by playing a style of guard that people aren't quite as familiar with yet. So I'm not saying that you should or shouldn't, but definitely if you're competing in IBJJF rules, playing a reap heavy, heel hook based, butterfly to leg entanglement kind of guard is not super useful. So you are more likely to end up playing this in an IBJJF set. Please double check, talk to the ref before the match if you're able to, because you're certainly not allowed to do it during the match, that's verboten.
And ultimately, even if there is the perfect IBJJF ruling, it's still interpreted by human beings in the heat of the moment who've got 1 second to make a decision. Is this a reap? Is this not a reap?
Yeah, I'm pretty dismissive about the IBJJF. I'm not a big supporter of them, but I also do recognize that in the heat of the moment, people screw up. It might not even be a Brazilian home base bias type thing. It might just be like, man, it's the 50th match that the guy reffed that day. He's really tired. We did a tournament recently in Washington where a ref actually agreed with me, where I was like, hey, what about the mount points? And then he was like, oh yeah, I forgot. And came up to me and was like, man, it's got to be the first time ever a ref agreed with a coach, right? And he was very gracious about it. So in my experience, refs aren't out to screw you. So like I said, it might not even just be that. It could just be a moment. So please, know what you're getting into. Try to clarify.
If you're doing that back-taking style, gable gripping style of attack from Mantis.
From the Mantis, just know
you can still play lots of other attacks from the Mantis.
Of course, there's ton. Yeah. The majority of the attacks don't necessarily. Particular student who basically just runs a train on everybody with just that one attack over and over again. But we could give a fuck about IBJJF rules at my academy. If you do, govern yourself accordingly.